All right, welcome back to another episode of the Productivity Show. My name is Brooks from Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And really thankful and excited to have Marmel back on the podcast. Marmel, who is the Scrum Master of Asian Efficiency. Welcome back, Marmel. What have you been up to in these however many episodes it's been?
I'm glad to be back, and I'm really excited because remember the dojo. I commented that I can't wait to try out my new AirPods Pro that my husband gave me for Mother's Day. So now today's the day.
Let's just say I did not give my wife AirPods Pro for Mother's Day, but I'm very helpful, or very thankful that you're here, Marmel. We're going to be talking about 3 ways that you can use to increase your energy. So we're doing kind of a 3-part series here. Last week we talked about in TPS 357, we talked about time. This week, we're going to talk about energy. And next week, we're going to talk about attention, which are the 3 components of the Chi framework, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But as usual, whenever we record an episode, we like to start off with our top 3 resources. So these are 3 things that are helping with our productivity that we or members of the team or members of the Asian efficiency community are loving right now. And I will just take it away. I'll start right off with an app that I think you use as well, Marmel, and that is Calm. So Calm is a meditation app, but it does a lot more than meditation. I also use it for sleep stories. So if I'm having trouble sleeping, I don't use it every day, but if I'm having trouble sleeping, it has really great sleep stories and sounds and stuff like that that will help you sleep. But it also has guided meditations or timed meditations, something I've used for years and years and years and really enjoy it. So that's number 1, Calm. Number 2 is something that I personally do not use, but Tan does. Tan, the other co-host of the Productivity Show. And I know members of the dojo, our productivity community, use it as well. And that is the Apollo Neuro. So that is a wearable wellness device, and it helps with stress management, and it uses gentle vibrations to help the body de-stress naturally. And I know people who use Apollo Neuro really like it. So I wanted to mention it here in the energy episode. And number 3 is an app that I use off and on. I am using it right now, and it's called Waterminder. And that is a Android and iOS app that will help you track your water intake and also remind you to drink more water. So if you're finding that you feel like you need to drink more water, sometimes it can be helpful to track it and to get gentle reminders. So Waterminder is a great app specifically for that purpose. So those are our top 3 resources: Calm, Apollo Neuro, and Waterminder. So Marmel, we're going to talk about energy today. And if you're listening to this, you might identify with some of these statements. You might find yourself always saying at the end of the day, like, I'm always exhausted by the afternoon. I start out okay during the day. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But by the afternoon, maybe you're crashing. Or maybe you just constantly feel like you don't have the energy or the motivation to do the things that you want to do on your to-do list. Or it could be, you could be doing pretty well with your energy. You could generally feel pretty good throughout the day, but maybe you just want to take it to that next level. You want to maximize your energy to be more present outside of work, or to just be even more focused and engaged at work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Next week, like I said, we're going to be talking about 3 ways to increase your attention. So if focus and attention is your issue, make sure to check out next week's episode where we're going to deep dive into that topic. And we have some comments in the dojo. We have our live chat with the dojo. Have a lot of fans of Waterminder in there. So I didn't know so many people used it. So Priscilla says, Waterminder is just great. I have it on my Android cell phone. And yeah, I really enjoy that app as well. So as I mentioned, the reason we are talking about energy in the first place is because it is part of our T framework. And for us, what we found is the T framework is the key to reaching your goals, reaching your potential, and being as productive as you possibly can be. And the idea is that all productivity challenges break down into either one of 3 areas. Maybe you just don't have enough time, or at least it feels that way. Maybe you don't have the energy to do what you want to do, even if you've set aside that time. Or maybe you just feel distracted or unfocused, and you can't give things the energy that they need. So T equals time, energy, and attention. Last week, we talked about time in TPS 357. But today, we want to talk about energy. And Marmel, why is energy so important? Like, why do we want to make sure to give this one a lot of love?
A lot of people, especially let's just say you're new to productivity and still learning stuff, we often would say that, I just don't have the time to do it. And I've heard this from my friends a lot too. Like, that's the first thing that they think of. I don't have the time. But a lot of times it's not really about the time, it's about not having enough energy. That's why we tend to procrastinate, because we don't have the energy to do stuff. Because you can time block all you want, you can plan that your day, your week, your month, your year, but if you do not have the energy to do all those that you've planned, then it's not going to happen. Or the other side of it is that you tend to do it, but the quality of your work is not going to be the same.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've all been there, kind of grinding through it when we're at low energy. And I think we can all say that even if we get something done, maybe it's not done as well as it could be, like you said. Now, by the way, there could be, real medical issues leading to your lack of energy. I know a lot of people do experience that sort of thing. We're obviously not qualified to speak to the medical issues and the medical advice. Marmel, I don't think you're a doctor. Am I correct in that?
The last time I checked, no.
Okay, great. But one thing I did want to mention is back in TPS 256, so you can go to theproductivityshow.com/256, we did an episode called How to Be Productive Through Illness and Recovery. And we had two professional organizers on, James Lott Jr., who actually was just recently on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, of all things, and Jennifer Lava. And they both shared their experience of being as productive as was relevant for them, while they both have deal with long-term illness. And many people have found that episode really, really helpful. So if you do fall into this category, might be worth your while checking out TPS 256, How to Be Productive Through Illness and Recovery. A lot of people have found it really, really helpful. Now, we're going to do our top 3 resources, but let's get this out of the way first. I'm just going to go on record right now and say the tips are not going to include get more sleep or get better sleep or take naps or exercise more or improve your diet, eat clean, all that sort of stuff. Those are not part of our top 3 tips. They're not because they're not important. It might sound funny because a lot of energy issues do come down to sleep, diet, and exercise. However, we feel like this has been covered a lot on the podcast, and it can be helpful. It can be true. These things can be important, but we wanted to kind of under some other tips that you can use to increase your energy rather than sleep, diet, and exercise. And I mean, they'll be related in some ways, but because it's been covered a lot, we wanted to kind of go a different direction. Now, really, a lot of time, it does come down to sleep quality, exercise, and diet. So if you have the ability to increase any of those things, it will definitely be helpful. But we're going to do our 3 ways to improve your energy now. And we're going to start with the first one, which is to track your energy. And when we say track your energy, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Even just having a notebook at the side of your bed or something like that. And maybe at the beginning of the day, just make a note of how you feel. And then later on at the end of the day, or maybe even during the day, make a note of how you felt during that day. You can take it to the next level. You can use apps and tools. There's, of course, smartwatches that will track a bunch of metrics. I know Tan is a big fan of the Aura Ring, and he uses that to track how what his score is and how he can improve that. You can definitely use those things, but it really doesn't have to be fancy. But the idea is, and the reason tracking is so helpful is because you can see over time what impacts your energy, both positively and negatively. If you have low energy periods, you can look back and you can say, okay, well, what was going on at that time? What could be causing it? Maybe it's types of food that you had around that time. Maybe it's your sleep. I know we promised weren't going to go there, but this is something that you could uncover in by tracking your energy. It could be problems with family members or coworkers. Personal interactions can definitely have a big impact on our energy. Maybe it could be obligations. Maybe you're finding yourself having too many obligations outside of work with committees, volunteering, kids sports, all that sort of thing. These are the types of things, as you track your energy and you look at what else is going on, these are the things that can really be uncovered. And once you have a sense of what might be triggering those periods of low energy, then you at least have something to go off of, and you can start taking steps to improve. You could maybe get to the root cause of those interpersonal issues. You could maybe try to get out of some obligations. You could improve some of those diet, sleep, that type of thing that you've uncovered with your journal. And again, it doesn't have to be super exact data. You don't have to have certain scores or know to the minute how many hours of sleep you get and stuff like that. The idea is just to have a general sense of suspicious causes, and then you can experiment and try to improve it. Marmel, have you ever had this sort of either by specifically tracking or just identifying patterns and then with your energy and then trying to take steps to improve that?
And so I do use a smartwatch, like the Apple Watch, and I track my energy through that. And I notice that every time I close out all the rings in the smartwatch, is that I feel more energized. But then I wanted to take it a step further. So if the Aura ring shipped to the Philippines, I would have bought that like a long time ago. Ever since because Tan talks about it, a lot. So anyway, so Tan mentioned, and I think he mentioned this in one of the podcasts wherein he did a test. I forgot what it was called, but here in the Philippines, we actually have the nutrients and vitamin deficiency test, and that's what I took. And the results were I was deficient in iron and also potassium. Knowing that, it actually helped a lot because I took supplements, and I don't after that I don't really have issues with energy anymore. The only time that I do notice that my energy is quite low is when I wake up and I'm dreading something for that day. Like I have to do something that day that I do not like to do. But I also know that it's all in my head. So what I try to do is just to try to divert my attention, try to do something that I like first before doing that dreaded thing, so that at least I get pumped up.
That's a great example of noticing what else is going on. And I think a lot of us can definitely identify this. Our energy level can just like go through the floor when we start dreading things that are going to happen during that day. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is definitely something that if you track it over time, then you can start noticing when that happens. And then, like you said, you can start doing some things that will help with that. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. I went through this a while ago. Actually, a friend of mine I just had a conversation with a friend of mine recently. We were out for some drinks, and then he and his girlfriend were there, and they were mentioning that she found that she was turns out she is very allergic to, or not very, but she is somewhat allergic to cornstarch. And this came out through this exact process that we're talking about. They noted, well, she didn't notice, he noticed that whenever they had something that involved cornstarch, she just would not be feeling very well, but never really knew why that was. And it was by then, kind of paying attention and tracking what was going on, that's how they figured it out. I went through that with almonds as well. Turns out I'm quite allergic to dairy, but very, very lightly allergic to almonds. But whenever I have almonds, it just like totally drags me down, which is always a problem, because I used to have this habit of when my wife wasn't looking, I would like buy some dark chocolate almond bark and slip it into the grocery basket. But I had to put a stop to that once I realized what was going on. So these are the sorts of things, when I noticed that connection with almonds by tracking, that's when I was able to stop it. So, however you want to do it, whether it's apps, journals, whatever, tracking your energy levels can be really, really helpful for giving you something to work off of to improve. All right, so let's do tip number 2, and that is to, and this goes right back to what you were talking about, Marmel, about dreading what was going to happen during the day, and that is to optimize your mental and emotional state. And there's a great book called The Power of Full Engagement. It's by Jim Lower and Tony Schwartz. And in that book, the authors make it really clear that there's a link between your energy and your engagement with whatever is important to you. We're going to post a link in the show notes. So go to theproductivityshow.com/358 to some of these images I'm going to talk about. But they, in the book, they present an energy level pyramid. And what they found is that your engagement really relies on your physical energy, of course. That is what we, that's your like diet, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. That's your kind of like physical energy. But it also has a big part in your emotional, your mental, and they even say your spiritual energy as well. And if any of those are missing, you just can't be fully engaged. So they also share this great quadrant. We're talking a lot about quadrants on the podcast lately, but this is another quadrant called the Dynamics of Energy quadrant. And what they do, and again, we'll post a link to the image in the show notes, but basically when you map out this stuff in your quadrant, you can have positive energy but low engagement. So you're relaxed and serene, right? Your energy is positive, but you don't have to do too much. You can have negative energy but low engagement. So that's when you're burned out, you're defeated, you're exhausted, all that sort of thing. You can have negative energy but high engagement. So you're angry and you're fearful. You have that high engagement. But ideally, where we want to get to as much as possible is that top right quadrant, which is positive energy and high engagement. So you're invigorated, you're challenged, and you're confident. And so the question, of course, becomes how do you get there? You gave that great example of having things that you dread throughout the day, which is going to drive you probably into that maybe low negative quadrant where you're just like kind of like low key, as my kids would say, dreading, dreading, what's going to happen. Some of the ways you can do it is to do reframes. So instead of saying things like, I have to do X, maybe spin your language. The words we use, even mentally, can have a really big impact on how we approach things. So instead of spinning things in a negative, spin things in a more proactive and positive way. Another thing you can do is don't dwell on setbacks. So when something goes wrong, things will always go wrong. What can you learn from it? What can you do to avoid it or thrive in the future? Things are always going to go wrong, but instead of dwelling on it, how can you spin that as much as possible into a positive? And then finally, there's what is called Hanlon's razor, which is never attribute to malice, which can be adequately explained by stupidity. And what this means is being angry or resentful of other people really just sucks up so much emotional and mental energy. Really, what you'll find as you go through life is people are usually not out to get you. They're just clueless. So, you might be angry or upset about something a coworker or a family member did or said, and they haven't given it another thought because they were totally clueless. And doing these types of things can really, really help you reframe and get into a more positive mental state, which can help you go into that high engagement, high energy area. Marmel, you've already gave a great example of when you kind of went through this or dealt with this. Do you have any other thoughts about the emotional and mental side of energy?
Actually, I do agree with the pyramid, and the first two is what we have the physical, and then we have the emotional state. And I think for me, those two are the most manageable for me, anyway, in my opinion. But to be honest, I really struggle with the third and the fourth in connection, which is mental, mental and spiritual, as the pyramid mentioned. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know that I live with, I don't say I suffer from, I live with anxiety attacks. So, it's better these days, but when it happens, my energy and everything else will just plummet down. And the effort it takes to get my energy back up, it basically takes, it takes a lot of effort. But with I use calm, as Brooks mentioned. So the breathing exercises through meditation helps, and also my dose of people energy. Um, so when I say a dose of people energy, just being around people, those who give off good and positive energy for me, I know who those people are. So when I'm low on that, I go to them. It's like, when your phone is low on battery, you charge it. So how I that's how that's what I do. I recharge the good vibes in me. So yeah, I make it a point to meditate and just spend time with those people for my mental and spiritual health.
Good vibes only, good policy. I went through this actually. Some of this I went through the other day, where this last weekend we went on this long hike with my family, which was great. It was helpful for energy, except the part going up the mountain. But what ended up happening because of all the preparation and rushing and then just being like tired after is I missed meditating that day, which is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. However, it snapped a 150-day streak that I had going. And often what would happen in this situation is I just get frustrated with myself, and I would find it hard to get back on track. Like once you break a streak like that, it can be really demotivating and demoralizing, and hard to get back to it. But what I did this time is using these reframe strategies. I said, okay, you missed it. That sucks, but don't miss twice. And now I'm back on my 4-day streak as of today. So all right, I'm back on back on track. But we'll see how long the streak goes. And again, a streak itself is not that big of a deal, but having that reframe of, if you do miss something, if something doesn't go right, uh, just saying to yourself, okay, well, try not to do it twice. That try not to do it twice can be a really powerful way to get back on track, even instead of beating ourselves up and feeling bad. All right, so that's tip number 2, optimize your mental and emotional state. Tip number 3 is to reduce your activation energy with rituals. And a lot of times we feel this low energy because we just feel like we don't feel like doing the things that we should do. And one solution to this is to try making things just so routine that it would actually feel weird not to do it. So, some examples of rituals: the morning ritual, which we've talked about many times on the podcast, an evening ritual, which we talked about a few episodes ago. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. Maybe you can have like a start of work ritual to get those things done at the beginning of your day, or maybe a shutdown rituals at the end of the day. There's all sorts of different examples of things. But the idea is, if there's something that you want to start being consistent with doing, try to tie it to other things that you do that you're already doing, and try to make it just like ritual and automatic and things that happen every single day. And that will a lot of times eliminate the energy challenges that you have with doing those things that you want to do. And like I said, in TPS 350, that was the episode number, we talked about this a lot in our evening routine episodes. How about you, Marmela? Have you used a routine to make it automatic to do something that will help your energy?
If you asked me 7 years ago, I wouldn't know what you're talking about. But when I joined AE, like more than 6 years ago, I went through the courses, right? And the very first thing that I implemented was actually the morning ritual. So part of the morning ritual was drinking water. Like, I love my coffee and I love my soda. Water was at the bottom of my list. But when I implemented the morning ritual with drinking water as a very first step, it just became part of my day. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to think about what I needed to do the first 30, 60 minutes of my day upon waking up. I don't have to think about it because it's already automatic. It's built into me. How I start my day, how I spend my break time, or how I end my day. So, and because planning my week is also our routine, I don't break a sweat on what I plan to do every weekend. If there are some hiccups along the way, I don't, I don't worry about it because I've already planned it through, and planning has become part of my of my routine as well. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
like
take me a lot of energy to do stuff because, like I'm Siri now. I have automation.
automatic Marmel. Yeah, I mean, I can assure you at 5 a.m. this morning, I did not feel like going to the gym. That is for sure. However, it, along with reading and stuff like that, is just part of my morning ritual. And if I do have to miss it for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel right. I even go on holidays to just to make sure to keep that ritual going. And it's the same thing with my evening ritual. One thing I have always been bad at and always felt, my wife would kind of like politely recommend that I do stretches and stuff like that. And I would always be like, I just don't feel like it tonight. This is at the end of the day. I just, I'm too tired. I don't feel like it. But what I started doing is implementing the evening ritual and some of the things we talked about in TPS350, and now using the Theragun is part of my evening ritual. And it's the same thing. If I do skip it for whatever reason, maybe we're out super late or something like that, it just doesn't feel right. And I don't even need to think about it on a normal day. I don't need to feel like I need to stretch or anything like that. It just becomes something super automatic. All right. So those were our 3 tips. So other than diet, exercise, and nutrition, there's lots of other things that you can do to increase your energy. So you can track your energy, you can optimize your mental and emotional state, and you can reduce your activation energy with rituals. I think if there was something that I would say that you should start doing, we always like to end these episodes with something actual that you should start doing. I would say if you were to pick something to start with, I would say just keep a really simple energy log for the next week. Don't go and buy an Oura ring or something like that. I mean, go for it if you want to, but it doesn't have to be like that. Just keep a very simple energy log for the next week and try to see what impacts your energy both positively and negatively. What can you do to boost that positive energy, and what can you do to reduce the negative? Like I said before, next episode, we're going to talk about 3 ways to increase your attention. So I'm looking forward to getting focused for that. And as always, the show notes are available at theproductivityshow.com/358. So thank you so much for being here, Marmel. And thanks again, everybody, for listening. And we will see you next Productive Monday.